hundreds of immigrants tried to storm the border. So we were told, as you recall, that immigrants would not, in fact, try to storm the border in this migrant caravan. I was one of the people saying that this was a little overestimated. It wasn't going to be thousands of people trying to storm the border. In fact, it was not thousands of people. It was a couple of hundred people. I think one person actually made it across the border and then was immediately chased back across the border. But tear gas was fired at these crowds because some of these people were throwing rocks at Border Patrol agents. And here is what it sounded like when hundreds of people tried to storm the border between Tijuana and the United States. So you can see these folks breaking through a fence, running across no man's land toward the next fence. And Border Patrol showed up. And they're flying. What I do love about this is that you can see that some of them are flying the flag of Honduras. And Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, the new congresswoman from New York, in all of her wisdom, she said, well, this is just like refugees, like when the Jews were trying to flee Nazi Germany. Well, when the Jews were fleeing Nazi Germany, they didn't arrive at Staten Island, at Liberty Island, with the Nazi flag on them, right? If you're actually fleeing a place because of political asylum needs, you typically don't fly the flag of the place from which you are running. Also, the vast majority of these people are not coming because of political violence. The vast majority of these people are coming for economic necessity, which is a fine reason to try and enter another country, but you have to do so legally. You don't get to try to break through the fence. And that was not just that video. There's also video of people who are pushing and trying to push through the fence while shouting, yes, we can. Here they were at one of the border patrol stations at one of the big walls, and they actually tried to force open the fence. So you can see people there standing right outside the fence, and some people shouting, si se puede. And then it got even worse. There were some folks who were actually physically throwing rocks at members of Border Patrol, which was just delightful. In this video, if you can't see it, I will describe it for you. You can see folks who are actually picking up rocks, throwing them at Border Patrol agents. And then there was the famous picture that is now on the front page of every newspaper of Border Patrol having fired some tear gas near the crowd. Nobody apparently really got hurt, but here is some of the video, what it sounds like. So you can see, here's a guy picking up stones, turning around, and trying to throw it at Border Patrol. You can see them trying to fling the stones over the fence at Border Patrol. Now, once you do that, Border Patrol agents have every right to defend themselves as they see the need. Are these people we want to be citizens of the United States? Are these people we want to enter the United States? The answer, of course, is no. If you are throwing rocks at the members of our Border Patrol, well, presumably attempting to enter the country illegally, we do not want you here in the United States. Now, what's really funny is to watch a bunch of folks on the left downplay all this stuff. Well, it didn't happen. Or if it did happen, it's not really a big deal. Let's not make a big deal. And at the same time say it is so evil and so terrible that tear gas was deployed against all of these refugees, these poor huddled masses yearning to be free. Brian Stelter, the news guy over at CNN, right? His job is to monitor media bias, but he is a good example of it himself. Brian Stelter tweeted out, I'm watching the coverage. The southern border is 1,954 miles long. It's not being overwhelmed. That is legitimately one of the dumber points I have ever heard about any sort of attempt to breach a border. It turns out that the border between France and Germany was several hundred miles long. And when the Germans moved through Belgium in 1939, that was actually not, well, let's see, when did they move through Belgium? Yeah, 1939. When they actually moved in 1940. When they moved through Belgium in 1940, it turns out that that was a breach of the border that did not require you to breach the entire border at once. All you have to do is breach one point in the border, and that would amount to a border breach, right? And if people just rush through that, then that would be overwhelmed. Now, was the border overwhelmed? No, we had people there. It was stopped. Still, this is evidence that if you didn't have people there, you didn't have a wall, you didn't have some sort of physical obstruction, it would not be stopped. Hey, Simone Sanders, another commentator on CNN, she said, reminder, these are asylum seekers. The United States government is attacking asylum seekers. And this is after Chris Sherman of the Associated Press tweeted, U.S. Border Patrol has just launched tear gas into Mexico, breeze carrying it hundreds of yards, parents running away with choking toddlers, hashtag migrant caravan. Okay, so here is the question. Why were the parents there with the choking toddlers near a place where people were attempting to breach the border wall? We have Border Patrol stations. If people want to apply for asylum, all they have to do is walk up to the Border Patrol station and ask for asylum papers. Instead, people were trying to breach that border, throwing rocks at folks, and then when tear gas was fired back, then all of a sudden it's, how dare we do any of this? So it turns out that this is actually nothing new. President Obama in 2013 had a very similar situation. Okay, back in 2013, there were a bunch of people who tried to break through, and during the Obama years, it turns out that tear gas was fired as well. The use of tear gas was used several years back. No one cared then. Okay, and it turns out that the caravan confirms what President Trump has been saying for a long time, which is that the aiding and abetting of this migrant caravan to get them to the border so that they could use violence against Border Patrol agents and try to break through the border is a problem. Now, did that require 15,000 troops down at the southern border? No. Is it a massive crisis where thousands of people are breaking through the border and they're going to invade the country? No. Is it a problem? Yes, of course, it's a problem. This is not stopping folks on the left from trying to turn this into a human rights issue. Brian Schatz, who is the senator from Nevada, he said, "Who gave the order?" This is what he tweeted out, as though this is like he's now Tom Cruise in A Few Good Men. And suddenly you're going to see President Trump going, "You want me on that wall. You need me on that wall." So he's the senator from Hawaii, sorry, and he is an idiot. Who gave the order? Well, the order to defend yourself from people throwing rocks at you without killing people? I mean, probably like the normal rules of engagement that apply in any sort of conflict situation. Probably that. Again, I do find it ironic and weird that so many folks on the left are very, very upset at the deployment of like a tear gas canister at the border when people are throwing rocks at our troops. They didn't care when Obama did it. I mean, hell, they didn't care when Obama was literally droning American citizens who he said were terrorists. That everybody in this room faces is that if you are a person on the left and you see a woman on the right, that means that you are not really women, right? You're all fake women all out here in the audience, right? And we know that because, for example, you don't win track meets while being a biological man, so you're not a real woman. And it's just demonstrative of the fact that for the left, the demonization of conservative women is extraordinarily high. Sarah Palin is not a real woman, so she doesn't fall into that category. Hillary Clinton, however, is a real woman. Like, by the way, Hillary says she's exactly like Wonder Woman, which makes perfect sense if you're crazy. I mean, have you seen the movie? So I, too, would like to see a woman president. I do. And I would like to see it be somebody in this room, somebody with the right principles. In this room are the leaders that the country needs, not just right now, but 10, 15 years in the future when you're actually old enough to run. The people in this room are going to be leading the country, and they should be leading the country because great female leadership is just great leadership, period. And great female conservative leadership is great conservative leadership, period. So I want to talk about, I guess the theme of today is how to be brave. So I want to talk about 5 things I think that everybody can do, men and women alike, to be brave out there in the political world. So 5 things. The first thing is that you have to be brave enough, and this is something I think we on the right understand. You have to be brave enough to understand that your life is in your own hands. One of the great myths that's handed down to women of all ages across the country by the left is the idea that you are inherently victims of the system. And I see even some conservative women fall for this sort of thing. The idea that the American system is out to screw you somehow, that it's out to get you, that you're victims of a rape culture, that you're victim of a culture that wants to pay you less, that you're victims of a culture that is attempting to keep women back, hold women back, keep women down. This is absolute sheer nonsense. Women have never had it better in the history of humanity than in the United States in 2017. And I think that my wife is a great example of this. She's really able to have everything. She's a doctor. She has 2 kids. And the fact that she's able to live that life in America in 2017 is a testament to the fact that America is such a wonderful place. And that means that when people talk about a glass ceiling, there isn't a glass ceiling except in your own head. Except in the heads of people who put the glass ceiling there. There is no glass ceiling. And it takes a little bit of bravery to acknowledge that your life is in your own hands, that what you do with your life is your responsibility, that it's nobody's fault but your own if you fail in the United States as a general rule. You can do anything. You are capable of doing whatever it is that you want to do. That doesn't mean that everything's going to go your way. It doesn't mean that everybody is going to help you out the way that you would hope that they do. But no one cares enough to stand in your way. And if we're brave enough to acknowledge that freedom comes with responsibility and risk, then we are going to be able to succeed as Americans together. Second point, we always have to be brave enough to tell the truth. And for people who are interested in politics, this, of course, is the hardest thing because there's always this tension in politics between telling people what they want to hear and telling the truth. Most people want to hear lies. Most people want to hear things that they want to hear all the time. And, I mean, you know this from your relationships. I know this from my marriage. Sometimes you don't want to say things to people you care about because you don't want to hurt their feelings. But in politics, it is imperative that you say things that are true, even if it hurts the feelings of people on your own side. So truth above partisanship. And never has that been more true than right now. Never has that been more true than right now in this moment. Because right now, Republicans run the House, they run the Senate, they have the White House. And the temptation is to follow whatever it is that Republicans do and cheer it, no matter what. There's a tribal instinct that takes over in politics that essentially suggests that if the other side hates it, we must be doing something right. There's this weird idea out there that it's okay to lie if it's for your own side. It's okay to fib if it's for your own side. It's okay to cheat if it's for your own side. After all, the other side is doing it. Why would you deprive yourself of those tools? Why would you hamstring yourself? If the other side is willing to do all these terrible things to win, why shouldn't you be willing to do all these terrible things to win? So 2 points here. Number one, I don't think you actually have to do terrible things to win. If I believed that people had to do terrible things to win, I would not be in politics, and I would not believe in a representative democracy. Because the bottom line is, in a representative democracy, you have to be able to trust that people are going to be able to distinguish truth from falsehood, and it's our job to essentially deprogram people. Because you have millions and millions of Americans who have been programmed by a public education system and a media to believe certain things. But the answer to that is not to lie the way Democrats do. The answer to that is to tell the truth the way Democrats don't. To deprogram people, to tell the truth. And that also holds true for people on your own side, because you don't have the credibility, you, especially young people, you don't have the moral wherewithal to be able to stand up for your principles if you're not willing to stand up for your principles even when it may hurt you in the temporary now. And that's not some sort of deep read on the last election cycle. I'm not talking about who people voted for right now, because I think there are a lot of good reasons to vote for President Trump. I'm talking about the tendency that we all have in knee-jerk fashion to, instead of analyzing the issues, instead of analyzing the principles, say, people on my side like it, therefore it's good. And that's unacceptable. Something is either good or it's bad. It is not better or worse because people on your own side like it or do not. And that does take some courage. That takes some bravery to say to people who you've looked up to, people who you've listened to, that maybe they're wrong, that maybe they're doing things and saying things that are inappropriate. That takes some bravery. And again, that's something we're going to need to inculcate in our own movement. The third area